What happens to the child who is not only unseen, but actively despised? Not simply ignored, but treated as if their very existence disrupts the order of the family. Every culture carries myths of this banished son, the one cast out from the circle. Oedipus abandoned on the mountainside, Joseph betrayed and sold by his brothers. These stories are not far from our own private memories. Many men carry the silent brand of being the hated one, even if no one ever named it out loud. If you have ever felt like you were the scapegoat in your family, the one blamed, misunderstood, or quietly exiled, you know the ache I'm pointing to. It wasn't about your essence. It wasn't because you were fundamentally broken. It was the shadow of your parents, their unspoken wounds, projected onto you like a film screen. Hatred, in this light, wasn't proof of your failure. It was proof of their fragmentation. Yet still, your nervous system recorded it. Every glance of disdain, every word laced with contempt, etched a program. I am unworthy of belonging. This is the hidden program rejection installs in us. It doesn't remain in childhood. It grows with us, shaping how we love, how we fight, how we choose partners, and even how we sabotage success. The hated child becomes the man who confuses rejection with intimacy, who feels more alive in conflict than in calm, who mistakes vigilance for strength. This is not weakness. It is survival, written into the body. To see this clearly, we have to face the shock that brings both pain and liberation. The hatred was never about you. It was about the parts of your parent they couldn't face in themselves. You may have carried their unresolved chaos, but it was never your essence. Like Oedipus, like Joseph, like Moses sent downriver, you were cast away. But that very casting marked you for transformation. This video is not about blaming parents, nor is it about romanticizing suffering. It is about decoding how rejection wires itself into your adulthood and how the same wound can become the raw material for sovereignty. Rejection is not the end of your story. It is the forge. So let me ask you, when you look back at your own life, can you feel the trace of that exile, the sense of being marked, not for what you did, but for who you were? Hold that recognition as we move forward, because it will be the thread that ties the hidden child to the adult you are becoming. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that does not reflect your face, but your parents' unspoken battles. That is often the place of the hated child. In Jung's language, this is shadow projection. The parent takes the qualities they cannot accept in themselves and nails them onto the child. What the father fears in his own sensitivity, he mocks in the son. What the mother resents in her own ambition, she condemns when the boy shows even a spark of it. This is not simple dislike. It is a strange form of intimacy, twisted and unconscious. Hatred, in this sense, binds more tightly than indifference ever could. To be hated by a parent is to become the unwilling container of their inner war. The child is not just in the family system. He becomes the battleground of it. The wound here is not only neglect, but the steady message. What I see in you, I cannot stand in myself. Think of Cain and Abel. Two brothers, one adored, the other resented. The story is not about crops and sacrifices. It is about projection, love warped into rivalry. The hated child is often not weaker, but marked as the vessel for what no one else will admit exists. That is why so many men who grew up in this role carry a strange burden. They feel intimately tied to their parents' moods, yet never truly accepted as themselves. To see this clearly, it helps to trace the inheritance. Many of the criticisms that echo in your mind, the voice that calls you lazy, too much, too sensitive, did not begin with you. They were rehearsed in your parents' own upbringing, then passed on. When you hear them inside now, it is like listening to a recording from a play you never auditioned for. A way to meet this recognition is through simple reflection. Take one recurring criticism that still lives in you and ask, whose voice is this truly? Where did I first hear it? Does it belong to my essence or to the shadow of someone else? This questioning is not about erasing pain, but about unhooking your identity from borrowed contempt. When you begin to name the foreign voices, something subtle shifts. The hatred you carried begins to show its true shape. Not proof of your defect, but evidence of projection. And within that recognition, a quiet door opens. If the hatred was never truly yours, then perhaps your worth never left. Rejection doesn't only mark the heart, it rewires the brain. A child who grows up under chronic disdain doesn't learn to relax into safety. He learns to survive in constant alert. The nervous system becomes a radar, always scanning for threat, never allowed to trust the quiet. Joy becomes foreign, because joy requires a baseline of safety. For the hated child, that baseline never came. Neuroscience shows us something striking. Dopamine, the chemical that fuels motivation, pleasure, and healthy reward, doesn't flow in the same way when a child is consistently rejected. Instead of lighting up when safe connection appears, the brain adapts to scarcity. It begins to anticipate pain, not care. This rewiring doesn't vanish in adulthood. It can show up in compulsions, the endless scroll at night, the pull towards substances, the craving for approval that never seems enough. To the outside world, it may look like laziness or lack of discipline, but in truth, it is survival echoing childhood danger. I once read the account of a man who noticed his compulsive scrolling was not random boredom. It felt identical to the nights he sat waiting for his father's approval, desperate for a sign that he was enough. The glow of the screen became a stand-in for the glow of acceptance he never received. This is how rejection burrows itself into behavior. It disguises itself as a habit, when beneath it lives the old panic of not belonging. There is a simple way to interrupt this loop, not as a cure, but as a reset. When the nervous system locks into old patterns, a 3-minute pause can bring it back into balance. Breathe deeply for a slow count. Immerse your hands or face in cold water. Then speak one intention aloud, as if anchoring yourself in the present moment. This combination of breath, sensation, and spoken word signals the body that danger has passed. It is not about fixing rejection. It is about reminding the nervous system of safety. When you see your compulsions not as failures, but as adaptations, something softens. The hated child within you was not weak. He was resourceful. Every compulsion was his attempt to stay alive in a world that withheld love. The task now is not to condemn him, but to slowly teach the body what he never knew, that joy is not a trap, that safety can exist without vigilance. Rejection does not always leave a man quiet and withdrawn. Often it mutates into fire. If the child cannot be loved, he may choose to be feared. This is the archetype of the rebel, the boy who, having absorbed contempt, transforms it into defiance. From the outside, it looks like strength. But beneath the surface, rebellion is often dependency in reverse. The hated child still orbits the parent, only now by pushing against them instead of reaching for them. Nietzsche described something he called ressentiment, the posture of turning one's wound into revenge against life itself. Instead of grieving what was lost, the rejected son carries the wound like a banner, building an identity around defiance. This is why rebellion, no matter how powerful it looks, so often feels hollow. The self remains chained to the rejecting figure, just in opposite polarity. To hate them is still to be defined by them. Culturally, we see this image in James Dean's Rebel Without a Cause. He became an icon of independence, but the roots of his appeal lay in silent abandonment. His rebellion wasn't born of free choice, it was born of exile. That is the paradox. Rebellion can be magnetic, even admired, but it still whispers the story of rejection. To work with this pattern is to notice where defiance secretly rules, perhaps in arguments that flare not from conviction, but from the old hunger to prove worth. Perhaps in habits of sabotage, quitting, withdrawing, or burning bridges before anyone else can reject you first. When you begin to see these moments, a subtle reversal becomes possible. Instead of acting from spite, you can pause and ask, if I were not reacting to them, what would I choose for myself? This is the turning point. Defiance is not wrong. It carries energy, fire, raw vitality. But when it remains bound to hatred, it is reaction, not sovereignty. The task is not to extinguish the rebel, but to free him from orbiting rejection. In that shift, rebellion becomes choice, and choice is the ground of true authority. The hated child rarely leaves the family drama behind. Instead, he carries it into adulthood, disguised as romance. The boy who once learned that love feels like rejection becomes the man who confuses rejection with love's rhythm. This is not weakness, but the pull of repetition. Freud called it the compulsion to repeat. Attachment theory confirms it. What was familiar in childhood feels magnetic later. even if it brings pain. So the man finds himself drawn to partners who echo the old wound, the warmth mixed with coldness, the affection followed by contempt, the promise followed by withdrawal. To him, this rhythm feels alive, almost intoxicating, because his nervous system was trained to equate chaos with connection. Stability, by contrast, may feel dull or suspicious. The tragedy is that what hurts most is also what feels most like home. Think of Don Draper in Mad Men. Outwardly powerful, desired, admired, yet behind the mask, enslaved to relationships that mirrored his childhood rejection. He could master the world of advertising, but in intimacy, he was still the boy repeating the script of abandonment. This is not a fictional exaggeration. It is the quiet loop many men find themselves trapped in. The hidden mistake is believing these choices are free. On the surface, it looks like agency. I chose her. I wanted this. But in truth, it is the shadow choosing, not the sovereign self. The boy inside is reaching for familiarity, not freedom. And until this is seen, the cycle repeats. Each partner another echo of the parent's refusal. One way to bring light here is through reflection on patterns. Look back at the last 3 relationships that ended in rupture. Write down the emotional script of each one, side by side. The phrases, the tones, the moments of rejection. Then ask, whose voice is echoing here? Is it hers, or is it the echo of a mother or father? This is not about blame. It is about clarity. Clarity is what breaks the spell of reenactment. When you begin to see that your attractions are not random, but rehearsals, something opens. The hated child may still crave the rhythm of rejection, but the adult can begin to choose differently. And in that moment, the pattern loosens. Reenactment no longer rules. Many men who grew up as the hated child spend their adult lives avoiding the boy within. To turn toward him feels like weakness, as if embodying his fragility would undo the hard armor they've built. Yet Jung reminds us that the archetype of the orphan carries hidden potential. The one cast out is not destined for ruin, but for discovery beyond the tribe. What was despised may, in fact, hold the seed of destiny. Think of Moses placed in a basket and set adrift in the river. His rejection by family did not erase his role. It marked him for a path of liberation. The pattern is clear across myth. The banished one is not the end of the story, but the beginning of transformation. So too with the hated child within you. His weakness is not a defect. It is the unintegrated source of power waiting to be claimed. To reclaim him requires dialogue, not denial. One way is to give voice to the child in you. Speak aloud. They hated me because. Allow the raw words to surface, without editing. Then respond as the adult self. I see you. I do not abandon you. Finally, commit to a single act of inclusion each day. Whether it is a boundary honored, a ritual created, or a piece of work expressed. These gestures are not symbolic only. They are the reweaving of self-belonging. This practice is not sentimental. It is sober, even fierce. By meeting the banished child within, you dissolve the false story that he is weakness. You begin to see him as the root of your strength. Because what was hated in you is often what is most original, most alive, most necessary for the path ahead. When you allow that boy back into your circle, you discover that sovereignty does not come from erasing your past. It comes from integrating it. The parts once exiled become the very allies that help you stand with quiet authority. The hatred that marked you becomes the fire that forges you. Rejection leaves scars. But scars are not only signs of harm, they are also signs of survival. To have been the hated child is to have walked through a fire most never speak of. Yet what burns does not only destroy, it also tempers. Like a sword forged in flame, the one who endures rejection carries a strange kind of strength. Resilience born from surviving both love withheld and hatred endured. The risk is to let that rejection define the whole story. To believe that being unwanted is the essence of who you are. But integration offers another path. When you see that the hatred was never about your essence, you begin to stand apart from it. What once chained you becomes material you can shape. The very rejection that seemed to erase worth becomes the forge of discernment, self-possession, and sovereignty. There will always be an echo of that child who was marked and cast aside. Integration does not erase him, it honors him. It takes his wound seriously and folds it into adulthood, where he becomes not a weakness to hide, but a source of authority. This is the paradox. The hated child, when embraced, becomes the foundation of the man who cannot be easily broken. So the question now is not whether rejection marked you. It did. The question is how you will carry that mark forward. Will it remain a wound that rules you from the shadows, or will it become the raw material of a life lived from sovereignty? As we close, hold this thought. Hatred was never the end of your story. It was the beginning of a deeper strength waiting to be claimed. The fire you walked through did not erase your worth. It forged it. And now I leave you with one question to reflect on. Which pattern of rejection in your life are you ready to transform into a source of strength? If this conversation brought clarity, consider staying connected here, so these explorations can continue to walk with you.